My name is Dr. Regina Williams, and I'm a former member of the Class Dean's Diversity Council. And I have the pleasure of introducing to you the chair of Cleveland State University's Institutional Review Board, Dr. John Jay Jay Zorroski. Dr. Jeziorowski holds a bachelor's degree in education from Baldwin Wallace College. He also earned a master's degree in physical therapy from Columbia University and a PhD from the University of Toledo in 1990. Today, he serves as an associate professor in the College of Health Sciences here at Cleveland State University. For the next 15 or 20 minutes, he will tell us about the work of the university's Institutional Review Board, a little bit about its history, and its present-day role in guarding the privacy rights and also human rights of individuals who are the subjects of research projects. Please join me in welcoming to the podium Dr. Jeziorowski.
So it's a privilege to be here, and I really didn't know much of what I was getting into because it was because of a Institutional Review Board question that was directed to me from Dr. Williams that we actually had the opportunity to communicate, and she asked me if I'd be willing to participate at least for a short period of time in this event today. And any time that I'm asked to say anything about the Institutional Review Board and what we do, I jump at the opportunity to inform and educate individuals as to what it's all about, because I think we do really important work. And we have about 10 members on the Institutional Review Board here at Cleveland State University. And the thing about people that are a part of that is that they don't have term limits. They have a tendency to stay on for a long time. And I've been on the IRB ever since I came here in 1987. For about the last 6 years, I've served as the chairperson. And I want to highlight the fact that it really is a service and nothing more than that. I was asked if I had perhaps a PowerPoint presentation to share with you, and I usually don't do that when I talk about the IRB, and I always tell my students that, and I teach in the physical therapy program, and I tell them that when they see a patient, the patient's not going to bring a PowerPoint presentation with them to tell them all about the problems that they have, but they will talk to them as physical therapists, and you need to listen. And this morning at about 5:30 a.m. was the first time I had a chance to view this film. To get an idea, I thought I'd better take a look at it before I say what I think I should be saying. And it dawned on me, at least a portion of the film here, and I'd love to have more time to spend and have discussions in these breakout sessions about the film. But the fact that Henrietta actually had mentioned that she told people she had this mass and no one seemed to listen. So I think that it's appropriate for us to develop our listening skills as opposed to always being able to see things, and I certainly can't compete with the film that precedes this presentation. Along those lines of listening, one of the things that I usually do when I talk about the IRB is that I read a little story that talks about really the beginnings of the IRB. So if you would just bear with me and permit me to read to you a short story. At the beginning of World War II, Germany was the most scientifically and technologically advanced country in the world, and even had a proposed code of research ethics. In the field of medicine, the Nazi government supported midwifery, homeopathy, and nutrition programs, as well as research into ecology, public health, human genetics, cancer, radiation, and asbestos. They were the first to ban smoking in public buildings. And if I wouldn't have said to you that that was Nazi Germany, I could have said, this is the present day and age in the United States. Experiments involving battlefield medicine included treatment of gunshot wounds, burns, traumatic amputations, and chemical and biological agent exposures. In these experiments, the wound was first inflicted upon the victim by gunshot, stabbing, amputation, or other traumatic method, and then treated using various techniques. For example, in a study at the Ravensbrück camp, Polish women were shot and slashed on the legs. The resulting wounds were stuffed with glass, dirt, and various bacteria cultures and sewn shut. The infected wounds were then treated with experimental anti-infective agents. In another experiment, a mixture of phosphorus and rubber was applied to the skin of victims and ignited. After burning for up to 2 minutes, the fire was extinguished and the resultant burn treated with various chemicals and ointments. Another series of experiments involved amputation of upper and lower limbs and attempted treatment with transplanted bones, muscles, and nerves. Neither the victim nor the tissue donor did well in these studies. About half of the amputation victims died, and the rest were maimed for life. Experiments on treating exposure to chemical warfare agents were ongoing throughout the war years. Prisoners were forced to drink poisoned water and breathe noxious gases. Some were shot with cyanide-tipped bullets or given cyanide capsules, and a mortality rate of 25% was typical. On August 8, 1945, representatives of the British, French, Soviet, and United States governments established the International Military Tribunal in Nuremberg, Germany. After the initial Nuremberg trial of the Nazi leadership, a series of supplemental trials was held. The trial, officially known as the United States versus Karl Brandt et al., and popularly referred to as the Nazi Doctors' Trial, was held from December 9, 1946 to August 20, 1947. As the title indicates for this trial, the judges and prosecutors were all from the United States. The 23 defendants, including 20 physicians, were charged with murder, torture, and other atrocities committed in the name of medical science. Although the trial was called the trial of the century, it would probably have been forgotten except for the fact that the judgment included a set of standards known as the Nuremberg Code. The code stated that, 1, informed consent of volunteers must be obtained without coercion in any form. 2, human experiments should be based upon prior animal experimentation. 3, anticipated scientific results should justify the experiment. 4, only qualified scientists should conduct medical research. 5, physical and mental suffering and injury should be avoided. And 6, there should be no expectation of death or disabling injury from the experiment. The treatment for syphilis at the turn of the 20th century was, at best, crude and involved the use of heavy metal, mercury, and arsenic compounds. These were poisonous, highly toxic to humans, and had to be administered for a year or more. Severe reactions, even death, were not uncommon from the treatment, and some evidence suggested that treated patients lived shorter lives than the untreated. An agency of the United States Public Health Service, which was to become the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, designed a study to demonstrate the need for establishing syphilis treatment programs by investigating the effects of untreated disease. In October 1932, subjects were sought and encouraged to participate in the study with offers of free examinations and medical care. The men were not informed about their disease or the fact that the research would not benefit them. Non-therapeutic spinal taps, which were conducted in May 1933, were supposed to end the experiment. But a second phase of study started in late 1933. This phase introduced new procedures to strengthen scientific validity and to gain more information. A control group of 200 black men and autopsies of deceased subjects were added to the study. Like the original subjects, the members of the control group were not informed about the purpose of the study, but were told that government doctors were examining people for bad blood. In 1943, penicillin was accepted as the treatment for syphilis. However, during World War II, to keep the syphilis subjects from receiving treatment, it was arranged with the local draft board to exempt them from the military. By 1951, penicillin was widely available as the treatment for syphilis, but it continued to be withheld from the study subjects. Actually, the availability of penicillin was used by the study investigators as justification for continuing the study because it made the protocol a never-again scientific opportunity. Thank you for listening to that story. I think it's a very, very compelling story, and anyone that has any questions about the role and the responsibility of the IRB needs only read that or listen to that to fully appreciate its role. The Institutional Review Board at Cleveland State University and at other universities throughout the country is designed to protect human subjects involved in research. And I like to summarize what we do by calling to mind a T table, is what I call a T table. When I talk to my students and lecture to them and discuss things with them, I say, if you're looking at something and trying to figure out what works or what doesn't work, just create a T table for yourself. And I'm reminded of the clothesline tees that used to be in the backyards in North Toledo where I grew up. And on one side would be the kinds of things that the Institutional Review Board is designed to uphold. It's for the very existence of the IRB that these things are in place there. And I would like to share those. There's 4 of them, and this is just my own thinking here. 1 is dignity, 2 is respect, 3 is justice, and 4 is beneficence. And to be honest with you, 3 of those 4 actually came out of that Belmont report. I think you understand what dignity is all about. I think you know what respect is all about. And in the process of submitting an Institutional Review Board application for those scientists and those investigators that are conducting human subjects research, we ask that they provide an informed consent that provides all the details in terms of what this participant, what this subject, this human subject, is going to be getting themselves involved in. And I know some of the investigators roll their eyes, and they probably say a few other choice things about the IRB in the privacy of their own laboratories and offices. But the fact of the matter is that in many instances, the devil's in the details. And that's oftentimes what the IRB can do, is it can identify problems in the details that the investigators look right past. Many times, individuals, when they're writing computer programs, will be at a computer and they can't get that program to run. And the instructor walks by and says, well, you need a period after that letter E. And 20 minutes, that student was looking at that computer screen and could never figure that out. And just that quickly, that one little change makes the whole program run. And it's amazing how little things make a big difference. I myself conducted my dissertation research back in the late 80s and right around 1990 itself. And I was looking at thermoregulatory response to underwater running. And I actually had individuals self-insert a rectal probe so I could get core temperature while they were running, believe it or not. And I had to go through 2 IRBs, one at the University of Toledo, one here at Cleveland State University. And I still am a practicing physical therapist, and at the time I was working with a lot of scientists and engineers, researchers over at NASA. And in the process of providing treatments to them, many of them were talking to me a small talk, and they were interested in my studies and my research, and we brought this conversation up. Because thermoregulatory response is a big thing with respect to astronauts up in space. So it's just so happened that over the course of time, about 20 women actually volunteered, without me recruiting them, to participate in the study. It hadn't even been proposed or approved at that time. I was just kind of formulating it in my mind. When I went in front of the IRB at the University of Toledo, they asked me, is there any research out there that you have come across that can say that if any of these women subjects that might be participatory in the study are carrying a baby, if they're pregnant, can you be assured that what you're going to do will not harm the baby? And I said, I have not seen anything. This research is relatively new and novel. I haven't come across anything. And they said, well, you can go ahead with your research, but you can't use women. And as it turned out, I ended up having 20 men volunteers that participated in the study. And everything went well, and really no problems, because if a problem would have occurred, I would have been obligated to report back to the IRB so that they could immediately step in. They may not have picked it up on the on the application process, but they need to be informed about that, notified, so that there could be no further harm done once it's realized that there's the potential for harm. And I actually had a 5-foot diameter tank that the individual was exercised in, and it was about 7 foot tall, and you had to climb up a lifeguard ladder to get in, and then those boat ladders that hang over the side of a boat ledge down into the water, that was allowed you into the tank. And in about 7 foot of water, the person would run in place. And I'd monitor their heart rate, and I'd monitor their core temperature. And everything went well, and I was cleaning things up at the very end, kind of taking things apart, and this was down in the in Woodling in the small exercise pool. And as I was climbing out of the tank, I fell from a height of about 8 foot, hit the cement deck, and fell into the pool, and injured my knee to the point that I couldn't bear weight on it. And it dawned on me right then and there is how lucky I was that I never had any kind of an incident occur while people were participating in this. It never crossed my mind. In fact, 2 IRBs looked at it and never crossed their minds the possibility that someone might fall out of the tank and become injured, or perhaps even have a cardiac event while they're in the tank and, God forbid, try to get them out of the tank. So that's what the IRB is. It's really intended to kind of look at things that the investigators may gloss over. I'll share with you one more quick story because I think the lessons are in the stories themselves. One of my colleagues was approached by a practitioner here in the greater Cleveland area who was approached by a manufacturer of a medical device. The medical device was for management of pain and healing of tissue. And they approached this practitioner because he has a flourishing practice, and they were interested if he would try it out. And they said, you know, if you could also collaborate, we know you have some relationships with the academicians over at Cleveland State, if you could get some research out of this, we would really appreciate it as well. So we did. We have tremendous amount of respect for this particular practitioner. And he approached one of my colleagues, and she dutifully filled out an application for the human subjects research. And it just so happened that that application was circulated to me. I was on the rotation at the time, and I read it over. And I'm familiar with devices that are being used for remediation of pain and promotion of healing, so it didn't surprise me a bit. It didn't intimidate me to read this. And then I was reading through, and they said part of the protocol was that if the individuals were receiving any medication for pain, that they were to refrain from taking that medication. And I thought to myself, well, okay, you want to control the experiment, you want to make sure that you can interpret the results of the experiment, and that's one way of doing it. The next sentence is the thing that really stopped me in my tracks. It said they're not to inform their physician that they're going to go off the medication. I thought to myself, you got to be kidding me. Can you imagine a patient going back to a doctor a couple weeks later, and the doctor saying to the patient, well, you know, how are you feeling today, John? Well, I'm doing okay, but, you know, I have been in a lot of pain lately. Well, are you taking your medication? Well, not really. Why not? Well, actually, I was involved in the study, and part of the study said not to take the medication, not to tell you. Can you imagine what kind of relationship that would, you know, continue on between myself and the doctor when I was non-compliant with something and I also was deceptive in not sharing that information with him? Problematic. That's what the IRB is about, is to try to look for some of these things that the investigators, not intentionally, but oftentimes unintentionally, are unaware of, and point it out to them, and in most instances, if not all instances, suggest some alternatives. In all the years that I've been the chair of the IRB, we have never turned down an investigative application proposal. We've always made suggestions in terms of how to make it work. And then it was up to the investigator as to whether or not they wanted to adopt those recommendations. On the other side of this tea table, I just want to mention to you is the things that we really have to guard against, and I think you could fill in the blanks yourself. 1 is deception. 2 is coercion. 3 is conflict of interest. And 4 is risk. We're really risk managers. And so if you are in the process of human subjects research and you fill out an application, hopefully you have a little understanding of what the IRB is all about in terms of protecting those individuals that are going to be very, very important with you trying to understand your research and trying to generalize the results of your research. And in many ways, it also protects the investigator and the institution as well. We're federally regulated. That means we have to interpret and apply the laws of the land with respect to human subjects research. So it's not just about our own opinions about things. It really is, as you can see, has some deep roots in terms of its beginnings and its purpose. So I thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you.